Hello and welcome to CST Connect, the show that keeps you informed about what's happening at the University of Detroit Mercy. I'm your host, Joel Parkkila, and we've got a great show for you today. First up, we'll tell you how you can expand your worldview, travel to exotic places, and get college credit for it. You guessed it, we're talking about study abroad opportunities. After that, we'll meet some softball players from the UD Mercy Titans softball team and tell you how you can support the team. Joining us tonight is Lara Wasner, the Director of Language and Cultural Training and the Director of the Brazil Study Abroad program at UD Mercy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to talk about the program.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Study Abroad program in Brazil?
Sure. I'd be happy to. The Brazil Study Abroad program began in 2005. I co-founded the program with the Director of the African American Studies program, Dr. Stephanie Mitchum, who was also the chair of religious studies at the time. And we were looking for a study abroad program that was focused on the African diaspora. And then we stumbled upon Brazil and realized that there was a lot of culture that was central to African history and African culture. And so we found that Salvador, Bahia, Brazil is rich. It's a cultural mosaic. There's a lot of history, a lot of performance arts, etc. in that area. And there's a lot of context for comparison between slavery in the United States and slavery in Brazil. There are a lot of African traditions that are still alive today in Brazil, and particularly that area of Brazil. So it really is an opportunity for UDM students to discover a part of culture and history in another part of the world. And I think they've learned a lot about themselves, and there are a lot of defining moments for them in their academic careers by studying abroad.
Cool. Is that pretty much what they learn there, like learning about the culture there, or do they?
Well, it's a central focus. Afro-Brazilian culture is a central focus. However, we did decide early on to rotate that program throughout the College of Liberal Arts and Education. So truly it speaks to a lot of different disciplines. The variety of disciplines that we've covered so far in Brazil are religious studies, as well as communication studies. Intercultural communications was taught for 3 years by Dr. Barbara Bowles, as well as introduction to Portuguese language as well as Brazilian culture. And those two courses, African American Studies as well as the Intro to Portuguese, are mainstays of that program. So this year we are actually adding a course, Comparative Education, so that truly it does span the liberal arts and education disciplines.
Cool. How many students do you usually have out there?
Well, we had an average of about 16 students during the first 3 years. Last year, due to, I think, mainly economic reasons, we cut that number in half. We had 8 participants last year, but despite the smaller number, there were really a lot of opportunities for a smaller group to participate in as opposed to a larger group. For example, every day in Brazil, students had an opportunity to eat lunch in somebody's home, and that was possible because of the small amount of students for that. So the dynamic changes from year to year, and you know, it has its positives in a smaller group context as well as in a larger group.
Yep. How much does it cost to go?
Well, we have what's called the program fee, and then we have tuition. It's important for students to know that the program fee covers your airfare, round-trip airfare, as well as in-country flights while in Brazil, because there are a couple of those. It covers all of your ground transportation while you're in Brazil, as well as your accommodations. We stay at pretty nice hotels in Rio de Janeiro, as well as Salvador, which are our two major cities that we visit. We spend 2 days as tourists in Rio de Janeiro and prepare for the bulk of the academic program, which takes place in Salvador. The program fee is $3,200, and that covers everything I explained. And then the tuition is assessed separately. However, the tuition is discounted so that it sort of balances out what you're paying in the program fee. It's discounted this year at $560 per credit hour for undergraduates, as opposed to $735 that you pay here on campus. So really, if you take, if you maximize the number of courses, there are 3 offered this year. If you do 3 classes while you're in Brazil, you're getting 3 times the discounts that you would. And then, of course, tuition's going up this fall, so you might as well capture the discounted rate of tuition, participate in the opportunity for travel abroad, do it in Brazil.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks. It's a 2-week intensive program as opposed to staying here on campus.
Wow.
Now, I think talking about the program costs, what's also important for students to know is that financial aid can cover everything from A to Z. It can cover your program fee as well as your discounted tuition if you're registered in 6 or more credit hours during summer term. That's a federal mandate. So if you take 2 courses, and that can be 1 class in Brazil and 1 class here on campus during summer too, then potentially you can get that financial aid, usually in the form of a student loan. You do have to pay it back, but in this way, it does make study abroad accessible for students who otherwise would not be able to even fathom coming up with that kind of money.
So how many credits exactly can you get?
You can earn 3, 6, or 9 credits in Brazil. You can choose amongst 3 courses that are offered this year. Again, African American Studies 2000, which is Intro to African American Studies, although the context is really on Afro-Brazilian Studies. The second course that we're offering is the Intro to Portuguese Language and Culture. And the third course we're offering is the comparative education course, where we're comparing education systems between the United States and in Brazil.
Wow. Do students need to speak Portuguese?
Well, whether or not they enroll in the Portuguese class is part of our pre-departure sessions, and there are 4 orientation and 4 curriculum preparation sessions. Students will learn to speak Portuguese.
Yeah.
In Rio, they'll find that there are a lot of English-speaking people, and people are very happy to practice their English. However, once you get to Salvador, and it's a city of 3 million, the chances of you running into somebody who speaks English other than in the hotels or other than, interpreting in our classroom settings is going to be very slim to none. But it's a good opportunity for students to engage in that immersion context, and that's the best way to learn a language anyways. So yes, we want our students to understand the culture before they go. We want them to understand best practices while studying abroad and some of the culture shock they'll experience. We want to give them the ultimate preparation before they even go, and that includes speaking Portuguese. And before they know it, they'll be speaking Portuguese.
Yep, cool. What are some of your best experiences out there?
I wish my students were here tonight because they could tell you about some of the best experiences. I think there are so many defining moments, and it really depends on the student's perspective and their discipline. Students always bring something unique to the whole experience. So we've had education students in the past who really, when they learned about the education system in Brazil, and there are 200 million, the population is 200 million in Brazil. A third of the population, 44%, actually over a third, are actually the ages of 15 or under. So there are huge implications for education there. Learning about the affirmative action movements that are occurring right now in Brazil and how they are central to changes in K through 12 and higher education are really important. Some other defining moments have been our learning about and participating in and visiting the landless workers site in Brazil. The MST movement, which translates into the landless workers movement in English, is the largest social movement in South America, and that social movement is responsible for getting homes for 250,000 families in Brazil since 1985. And the Brazilian government has actually added into the constitution that land use should be used for a larger social purpose in Brazil. Another defining moment, which I think is really relevant and current and today, is the greening of Brazil. Brazil is about 95% or more self-sustainable. All of their cars, or a majority of them, run on fuel-based ethanol, but we also learn some of the ramifications to the environment. We talk about and learn about urban deforestation in some of the cities in Brazil as a result of farmers farming and the corn crops that have to be used to create the ethanol-based fuel. So that somewhat decimated some of the green